It's always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. So the Browns get Kansas City this Saturday, and I want to go back to what we're going to see. How important is it for Deshaun Watson to get this playing time? How important is it for the starters? Will we see Nick Chubb even get a couple carries in this game on Saturday? There are a lot of little things that need to be kind of dusted off in case there's rust on them. And then you might get rusty again because you got a little bit of a wait until September 10th.
Well, Nick Chubb is not playing Saturday. I'm fairly basically, I think that the guys that did not play against the Washington Commanders will be the guys that do not play against the Chiefs. So that being what it is, and I'm right now scrambling to look up all the guys that did not play against Washington just to give people an idea.
It was a pretty healthy list.
Yeah. So, like, let's see here. No, that's. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty healthy list, but
right.
Yeah.
It's probably just easier to say if you didn't see him in that game, you'll probably see him in this game, right?
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of work does Deshaun Watson need in this game? I think it just goes back to get your work done. I don't know that we sit around and say, well, 25 plays, you're going to get 25 plays. Should he play into the second quarter? Should he play in the second half? I don't think that's what the case should be. I think the case should be is if he can go out there, get a couple drives, look effective, crisp, and clean, and work out any issues he may have in a very vanilla offense where they're probably not going to run a whole lot of stuff. That's all you need. You just need him to kind of take a dip in the pool and then know what the pool feels like when it starts on September 10th.
Yeah. And they just, most importantly, they want to replicate what they did against Washington, but they want to replicate it on a longer scale there. They not only want to see that long sustained drive, they'd like to also put some points on the board. But again, I don't think Nick Chubb's going to be so, like John Kelly and
we haven't seen Donovan Peoples-Jones. We haven't really seen any of the receivers. We haven't seen Amari Cooper.
Yeah,
those guys aren't really,
Yeah, so I think you'll get a little taste of those guys. Like Jakeem Grant, he's going to return kicks and punts. I think he's on the team, which I think kicks Austin Watkins off the team. Because just based on what Kevin Stefanski said on Wednesday, he was asked, hey, do you need to see Jakeem take some offensive snaps to play into whether or not he makes the roster decisions? And Stefanski said no. And then I kind of followed up a little later and said, okay, well, the rules have changed, so does having a specialized returner really matter all that much? And Stefanski basically said yes. He said they value the return game. So, yeah, I think Jakeem Grant makes this team, Andy.
So are you keeping 6 or 7 wide receivers?
6. You can't get. How can you keep a 7th unless you keep 2 tight ends, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they have to keep 3 tight ends.
You could mythically put Jakeem Grant down as a kick returner and then keep a 7th. But the question there that because I'm saying 7 based on Jakeem Grant, Daryl. So saying that Jakeem Grant is a wide receiver. If you kind of play him as a wide receiver, but kind of look at him as a kick returner and say, okay, we're giving Bubba like 3 slots or 4 slots, and he's going to fall into one of Bubba's slots, then that's okay if you want to look at it that way. And even if you did it that way, as much as they like, is it David Bell that's got the locked up spot? Are we saying that? Because I like David Bell, but I got to tell you, it doesn't seem like the return on investment is, unless there's something special happening in practice. I like David Bell. I really think that he's a guy that could help this team, but
they're not giving up on him after 1 year. There's no way. So David Bell's making this team.
And what about Schwartz? Gone? Anthony Schwartz?
Yeah, he's as good as gone.
Okay. But we sit here and we want to say that they're going to hang on to their guys they drafted, and as bad as we might think Schwartz is, he's still one of their guys that they drafted.
Well, put him back on the practice squad.
I think he'll have no problem getting there, right?
I think that's what's going to happen. So
and they'll probably try to get Watkins through to the practice squad too. Then isn't that a fair assessment?
Yeah, but again, this is the risk you make, though. If they've had really good preseasons, right, and that tape is out there,
So would you keep him, Daryl?
There's the Dorian Thompson-Robinson's making the 53. They cannot put that dude on waivers because he's not getting through waivers. You know what I'm saying?
Totally get it.
So he has, and that's the thing there, Andy, when you're like, oh, well, they'll just, keep a seventh receiver in Jakeem Grant. Well, they're also keeping a third quarterback on the active roster. So now that's 2 roster spots that are gone, right? Or two quote extra roster spots that you're having to use. So that's why I don't think they're going to keep 7 receivers, because they're going to keep DTR on the act. They got to, I mean, obviously it's not set in stone, but based on how he's playing, like, I just don't think there's just any way that they get him through waivers into the practice squad. They'll lose. I'm fairly confident in saying if the Browns cut DTR, he will be claimed on waivers.
Yeah, I would think so too. I cannot imagine him not getting picked up. I mean, and I heard the debate because Chris Rose said it during the broadcast that he thought there were other teams that could conceivably use him right now to start across the league. That's what Chris said, and then people were like, maybe that's not exactly true. I think he definitely could compete for other teams. I just don't know that he would be a starter for any NFL team. I mean, there are some quarterbacks I am not enamored with across the league, and so I think he could give some competition. But I don't think that's the case. In fact, I was going to bring this up too. Baker Mayfield getting the starting job in Tampa, and man, well, he was pretty, I don't want to say cocky, but he was extremely cocky about what he had to say after he got the starting nod. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that just, vintage Baker. Was this 3 different starting jobs, or, Browns, Panthers?
Well, 4. I mean, if you count being, kind of Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, that's true. I was thinking like week 1. I was,
okay. Yeah, that's fair. This is his third week 1 team.
Third straight year, or I'm sorry, 3rd year in a row, starting week 1 for a new team.
Mm-hmm.
If that did I say that right?
Yeah, that's correct. 3 straight years starting for 3 different teams.
Okay. Correct. That's what I meant to say.
That's okay.
Browns, Panthers, and then of course, Buccaneers. And yeah, I mean, that's just Baker being Baker. And I'll say this, like, if this doesn't work in Tampa Bay, I think he'll probably need to consider retirement, because let's be honest about it, Andy.
I think he could stick in the league forever as a backup if he could just stop, if his ego would let him do it.
That's what I was going to get to. I don't know that I don't think mentally he's built to be a backup quarterback. And I'm not criticizing him. Like, that's just who he is as a player and as a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not a backup in it. And I mean, to your point, yes, if he goes the Colt McCoy route, he can make a ton of money in the
Brian
NFL.
Hoyer, same thing, right?
Right. But like, those guys are wired differently than Baker is. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely, that makes sense. I totally get it. Brian is I'll use, because I think Hoyer is the perfect example of a guy who, had talent. Watching that Johnny Manziel thing really bothered me even more about what happened with Brian Hoyer here and the opportunity and what they were doing. And if Alex Mack stays healthy, what a year that could have been if they weren't worried about, as he said, selling tickets and T-shirts rather than who was the starting quarterback. Brian Hoyer said that on our show, and I was just like, he's right. I mean, I can't argue with him.
Well, we said that at the time, though, when they made the move,
right,
that it was about selling T-shirts and making the fans happy. It was not a football decision, because look, everyone in the building on the football side, including within the locker room, knew what the hell was going on with Johnny. They knew that guy wasn't ready. I mean, there's a reason in his first start against the Cincinnati Bengals, the offense didn't cross midfield and he got sacked like 20 times.
True.
And I think Joe Thomas was the only one that actually went out of his way to do his job up front on the offensive line that day. I mean, it felt like the offensive line, like, said hut, and they're like, Johnny's that way. You know what I mean? Like,
playbook. I don't need to watch any tape.
Right,
0.0.
You know what I mean? Like, when you want,
yeah,
that's what that game felt. It was like, yeah, the deuce is there. He ain't quite loose. Go get him. Like, I mean, it was a bloodbath. The offense did not cross midfield that game. It reminded
me of It reminded me of '99.
You know what? I've seen a lot of really awful, and I do mean awful, Browns quarterback performances. That was Like, there is no contest. Not even close. By far, the absolute worst single game quarterback performance in Cleveland Browns history was Johnny Manziel's first start against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Drop the mic. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. It's always game day in Cleveland. If you like what you're listening to, subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you on board. And you can always hit us up on social media, whether it's X or X or Instagram or whatever Bill Belichick wants to call it this week. Hit us up on that.
Face.
At the Snap Face. At Game Day what are we at Game Day?
At Game Day CLE.
At Game Day CLE. I get confused between this and the regular show. All right, we'll come back. We'll talk about the number one topic around Northeast Ohio. To kick or not to kick? That is the question.